In Texas.
It has been very certain that it would be sub-freezing this weekend.
It's causing havoc at airports. Thousands of flights are likely to be canceled. As the storms approach, officials in Indianapolis are telling people simply stay indoors.
Just to make it clear, 20 below zero isn't only cold, it's extremely dangerous.
In most cities, warming shelters have been set up. In Atlanta, the mayor is warning those who live on the streets.
Your tent is not going to be sufficient. Those blankets that people have given you are not going to be sufficient.
For those who deliver the mail, it will be especially challenging to get last-minute Christmas gifts to their destination.
You know you gotta do it, but it's scary. So I hope I come home with all my fingers.
More than 100 million Americans are expected to attempt to travel to holiday destinations during the next 3 days. Mother Nature, though, will have the final say. Steve Futterman for CBC News, Los Angeles.
Well, residents of Vaughan gathered last night for a candlelit vigil to honor the 5 people lost on Sunday. Members of the victims' families were in attendance. Dale Manukduk was there and shows how the senseless tragedy affected people from all over the community.
I have to be honest, I'm not sure that any one of us has the words that can adequately convey exactly how devastated and heartbroken we are as a community for all of you.
Mayor of Vaughan, Stephen Del Duca, addressing members of some of the victims' families. In a show of community support, more than 150 people gathered at City Hall to grieve alongside them.
I came because these guys were my buddies.
Don Grant used to be on the condo's board and knew the victims personally.
Russell was on the board and was an awesome guy. He really cared about the building. And Naveed was a realtor who lived in the building since it was built.
From Education Minister Stephen Lecce, whose relatives lived in the building at one point.
Really, I think about this Christmas while we are sitting down with our loved ones. We got to think about those that just don't have them at the table any longer.
To residents who still live there now, like Cara Espura.
We're used to getting on an elevator and saying, good morning, how are you, have a great day, and right now it's just we just stare at each other. So, but we pray for everybody.
Sunday's mass shooting impacted so many people. While the healing is just beginning, community residents hope their support lets victims' families know they are not alone. Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Vaughan.
That is the CBC News from Toronto. I'm Nicole Martin. This is CBC Radio 1. The weather forecast now for Toronto, Hamilton, and Niagara. A winter storm watch in effect. A chance of rain or drizzle this afternoon, a high of 4 degrees. We'll see rain beginning near midnight. Windy overnight, temperature steady near 3. Tomorrow, rain changing to snow in the morning, blowing snow in the afternoon. Temperature falling to -9. For Peterborough and the Kawarthas, a chance of rain or snow or drizzle this afternoon, a high of 2 degrees today. We'll see periods of snow mixed with rain late this evening. Temperature steady near 2. Tomorrow, rain changing to snow and blowing snow. Windy, temperature falling to -10.
Hi, I'm Mark Kelly, and you're listening to The Current. Still to come, the fascinating story behind the famous Tom Thompson art forgeries. But first, who's hungry? I've got a delightful, fluffy Christmas treat for you. Panettone. Well, with Christmas just a few days away, the usual baked gifts of gingerbread cookies, shortbread, and Christmas cake are making the rounds. And more, a somewhat new addition to Yuletide baked goods, at least for non-Italians, the panettone. It's a tall, round sweetbread loaded with candied fruit and raisins. CBC's Italy correspondent Megan Williams took a deep dive into the doughy world of panettone, including joining a jury to select the best panettone in Rome. She survived that bun fight and is here to tell us more. Megan, good morning.
Good morning, Mark.
I've heard you reporting, migrant issues, political scandals, but how in the world did you get the gig to be on the panettone jury?
Well, as most listeners probably know, Italy is a food-obsessed country, and there are a fair number of culinary competitions. And as a foreign journalist, I guess you could say I have the good fortune of being asked to participate in some. always alongside people, I should add, like chefs and food writers and food historians who actually know a lot about what they're talking about. I'm familiar with the canons of Italian cuisine, having lived in Italy for so long, but I was definitely in the amateur camp on this jury.
Okay, Megan, so my personal disclosure here is I have never actually tasted panettone. What am I missing?
Ooh, what are you missing? Panettone, for a long time, had a bad rap as being sort of this stale sweetbread that nobody really liked. But if you have a proper panettone, it's moist, it's delicious, this sort of stretchy interior with candied citrus suspended in it and raisins, and it's really a delicious Christmas bread.
Okay, so bring me into the competition now. I get the idea of what I'm about to taste. Now set the scene about what this competition actually looks like.
So picture a dozen or so judges sitting around a table in this little darkened auditorium in the historic center of Rome, and beside us is a stack of 24 panettone. And now, in Italian, the plural ends with the letter I, so you say panettone, and the singular ends with the letter E, so it's panettone. So the panettone that we were judging were all made by Rome pastry chefs, not the kind you get in a supermarket, and they were the classic version, which contains candied citrus and raisins and nothing else. And some of them with nothing on top except a cross indent, which is the Milan version, which some experts would argue is the real panettone. And others had other things on top, like sugar pellets and almonds, which is the version from Torino or Turin, northern Italy.
So you've got a lot of variables, a lot of things at play here. So what exactly are the criteria then for judging?
Well, each of us got an evaluation form with the different categories. So we had to judge the aesthetics. So that's the color, how fluffy and consistent it looks, the shape. Panettone need to be dome-shaped. Then there was the tactile sensation. It needs to feel spongy and moist. You actually, they encouraged us to touch it and squeeze it. And then how it smells and tastes and the balance of flavors and aromas. And finally, the quality of the candied fruit and raisins that are suspended inside it.
Wow, it's so many things, Megan, at play here. And so for each of these criteria then, each category gets a mark? Is that how it works?
Yes, we were instructed to give it a mark out of 10. But before we even begin, this debate erupts about how to weigh the panettone.
What are they debating here to help me out with this one?
Well, this debate went on for about 10 minutes, and it was about the weight of a panettone. It has to be more or less 1 kilo, and just within a very short margin of 1 kilo. But the debate that arose was, is that weight with or without the circular paper wrapping? So after this prolonged discussion, they decided it was without it. So here they are peeling off the paper of each panettone before they serve it. And then the servers who are dressed in traditional black and white formal uniforms ceremoniously slice the panettone, and they place it on a silver tray, and they go around the whole table presenting the silver tray to each of us to visually assess it before giving us a slice that we can touch and smell and taste.
Wow, the anticipation is getting to me here, Megan. Okay, so how did the panettone do?
Well, this was a really hardcore set of judges. Italians in general give out low marks. My kids used to come home from school very excited with report cards that had like 6 or maybe the odd 7 out of 10. Grade inflation apparently hasn't crossed the Atlantic yet, but these judges were failing most of the panettone. There was a lot of sighing and eye rolling and head shaking going on, especially from this trio of rotund male pastry chefs at the end of the table who were just like categorically unimpressed by almost everyone. And one of them is a Milanese pastry chef, Gianluca Fusto, who was part of this little group, and he explained to me why he was flunking most of the contenders.
Non è un panettone da supermercato, ma sono dei panettoni che devono avere un valore. These aren't low-cost panettoni from the supermarket. These are expensive, $50 or more. And if people are going to pay that, it should be top quality. Frankly, most of these aren't. In some, even just smelling them was a turn-off. Way too acidic.
So some of these are just being failed because of their smell. I mean, what is it that makes a good panettone?
Well, I put that question to another juror, Marianne Lichley, and she's a French award-winning pastry chef at the Michelin-starred restaurant here in Rome called Il Pagliaccio. And here's what she had to say.
Well, a good panettone shouldn't be too dry. It should be well risen, not too heavy in your hands. Pleasant when you eat it. You should feel the butter, but it shouldn't melt. Not sticky, but still a little wet inside the dough, humid.
Okay, now that's the good panettone. So with the good panettone, I'm sure comes the bad panettone. So what's the bad side?
Yes, as Lisa mentioned, if it's dry, it's bad. And I think a lot of people have had those panettone, you know, the kind that someone brings to an office party that they got on sale the year before, just before the expiry date. But what also makes it bad, at least the artisanal ones, the expensive ones from the bakeries, are artificial flavors or aromas, as she calls them.
Sometimes the mistake there are in the panettones is the people use too many aroma instead of staying in the natural ingredients or just adding vanilla or making the candied fruit themselves, and that's sad.
Too many aroma?
Too many aroma, too many ingredients. It really is just supposed to have natural vanilla. So that's why a lot of the jurors were failing these panettone because they had orange or almond flavor in it.
Okay, so you were clearly sitting on a jury with people who take food very, very seriously. But as you said yourself, you are an amateur who had to taste and I guess smell and touch 24 panettone. I mean, that's a lot of panettone to keep track of. So how did you manage to separate one from the other?
Well, I didn't. I mean, 24 is just way too many panettone to judge. It's a sourdough sweetbread, so you're tasting slightly different mother yeast that each bakery creates. But other than that, it was essentially the same recipe 24 times. So to give you a sense of how I did, here are a few snippets of my judging process. I think this is just a bit too much. That's what I'd say. I don't know. I felt like I was tasting butter, but in fact, she just pointed out that it's probably the acids from the yeast or something, but there's just this kind of aftertaste that's not that pleasant. This one apparently is too pale. All right, we're halfway through. Number 12. What can I say? Moist. We're on number 14 now, and I am feeling a little sick. I'm starting to do what you do with a wine tasting, which is spit it out. Number 18 was just disqualified because there's supposed to be 1 kilogram and it was only 700 grams. We're on 23, we got one more to go. I feel sick. They're already dissing it. It's not a yellowy, eggy color, but we'll see how it tastes. Tastes like sort of, you know what it is? It's too sweet. It's just the sweetness overwhelms it. I really am sounding like an expert. I'm not. Last up.
Wow, Megan, I thought you had the dream assignment by judging panettone, but now I'm starting to feel kind of queasy along with you there. But you were judging the classical version
transformed into something else. So there's always this tension as food evolves, and it exists with the panettone as well.
You said evolving beyond its birthplace. Where was it born?
It was born in Milan, probably in the late Middle Ages. The first written records of it date back to about 1600. But like a lot of traditional dishes, there's folklore and legend that swirl around its origins. I went to Milan to meet with some pastry chefs there, and here's one, Giuseppe Gattuso, whose family has been making panettone for generations, telling me the Milan panettone genesis story.
Il panettone è nato a Milano nel 1400 circa. The panettone was born in Milan in the 1400s when the pastry chef of the ruling Sforza family, a man named Tony,
Si chiamava Tony.
learned the dessert. So had to come up with another one with ingredients he had on hand, like eggs, sugar, butter, and yeast, and called the bread pane of Tony. Pane Tony.
Questa ricetta è quindi nata il panettone.
The bread of Tony. I wouldn't have. I would have thought that that's a joke. Somebody.
Yeah, well, don't believe it. I mean, it's a legend, but I don't think many people actually believe it.
But is that essentially the same recipe that exists today?
Yeah, the recipe's the same. The form has changed. The first panettone were a lot flatter. They were still the sourdough product, but they weren't as high.